Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Bradu. Thanks for stopping by. For Christmas, I received this box set, the Welcome to Hellfire Club Stranger Things 5e starter set. I did not know that I wanted this, but honestly, I'm really impressed with it. I'm not going to review the whole box set here, but there will be some spoilers. Not huge, just for the first level of the Dungeon of Shadows, the first adventure in here. Anyway, we were at Grandma's house for Christmas and for a few days there, and I decided to tackle a couple things I had been wanting to do for a while. One of them is to convert a 5e to Shadowdark, which Shadowdark really is my game of choice right now. The other thing was to start an actual play by the rules and Shadowdark again campaign or adventure with my kids. So I just went for it. I spent a little bit of time prepping how I thought this would go. Told my kids I wanted to play. I've got a 4-year-old girl and 8 and 10-year-old boys. So yeah, I'm just going to kind of walk you through the process of what I did and what kind of things that I think could really help playing with kids. I have played with my kids before, but not like by the rules. I've really played like, okay, pick a character. I'll throw a monster out on the table. You tell me what you want to do, and if you roll a 10 or higher, you succeeded. That kind of thing. And we've had some fun adventures, but I decided to like actually, I want them to, especially my 10-year-old. He's ready to like make characters. So I had them roll up characters. I just used note cards to put their characters on because I had to use what I had with me. On that note, I didn't have any of my minis with me, so we used Lego minifigures, which was pretty sweet. So I actually picked out some minis here to walk through this. But let's see, how did I go about this? Let's tuck this aside. So I built, another thing I got was this terrain. It's the terrain set, I think it's called, from Loki Battle Maps. And it's got these clings. And so I just built a little starting area here and put out the map. I covered key areas of the map like that since this is the starting area. And I went like this. Oh, let me introduce you to the characters. My 4-year-old girl was Evelyn, a halfling fighter. We'll go with this. We'll go with this one for her. She had a nice. It was her minifigure was really cute for a Lego figure. She had like a Viking hat with long blonde braids and like a huge sword. So that was pretty cool. And I used the short legs so that it's clear that it's a kid. My 8-year-old was Peppermint Doodle. Let's go with this, I think. Oh, actually, let's use this one. Peppermint Doodle, an elven thief. He was sure he wanted to be an elf. We'll call it a drow. It was more like the mini we used was more like a Christmas elf kind of with the green cap type thing and a bow and daggers. He had a lot of fun, I think, playing the sneaky type. And then let's see, my oldest son played Demi, the cleric, human priest, actually. Human priest. So those will be my minis. So I had them up here. And I played Dumbledore, a dwarven wizard. Now, one thing I can talk about in terms of playing with kids is a DMPC as a parent. I don't generally think DMPCs are a good idea, but this is an exception. When you're playing with kids, you can really use playing an NPC so you can play it like your own PC and use that as a way to hint them in the right direction when they're a little bit lost and things like that. So I tried to really I go last in the initiative order and things like that so I wasn't stealing the spotlight and let them kind of roll with it and do what they wanted, but I was there for support. So yeah, that definitely I think is something you can really pull off. You can't do a DMPC with a group of especially like people you don't know well, adults playing. Big no no. With kids, I think it's a great way to help them along. So here's the adventure that we played, The Vanishing Gnome. It's kind of neat. They have these in like this old school style with like, that's actually fake. They make it look worn with little sketches on here. Just neat touches. Anyway, this adventure starts with Flizzlebin, the Vanishing Gnome. And the way that I played this out was kind of fun. So you hear the characters hear this voice as Flizzlebin calls out, well met, adventurers, 'tis I, Flizzlebin, the Vanishing Gnome, illustrious vagabond, yada yada yada. Find me in the dungeon and you will receive great treasure, sort of thing. So if you accept my challenge, see if you can find me. So then I did the voice, and then for a second, I poofed him and said, so they could see him, right? And then I placed a little Lego potion here and said, oh, you may need this. It may be your only chance at survival. And then poof, he's gone. And it was a potion of healing, so they have a, you want to give kids a little bit better chance of survival. So Shadowdark is by nature a pretty deadly game, but ease that up a little bit for kids. You don't actually want to kill off anybody. While still, creating danger. So then I had like this loud thunk, and they can tell where, that he had gone into the dungeon or whatever. So they follow him, pick up the potion. This is the best I could do for what I had. This is what the picture, I should have showed them this picture, but that's the picture of the entrance of the dungeon, and then it leads down to stairs. So they come into this room, and they have a choice of 5 doors they can go into. The recap, actually, this was really neat. One of the things that's so rewarding about playing with kids is when they get excited about it. So the next day, driving home, my son, the 10-year-old, gave my wife this full recap, step by step, of the entire adventure that we had done through the 2 sessions. And I was like, and the other 2 kids were piping in with like, oh yeah, that was cool when we did this. And so it was just really cool to hear their excitement. I want to talk about how to play with kids. One of the things you want to do is simplify things as much as possible. Don't get into every detail. And I kind of alluded to this already. You want to let them succeed. Give them a chance to succeed. So there are times when I play with adults with my main group, I roll everything out in the open. If you die, you die. Like pretty hardcore, by the book. There's no fudging. I wouldn't fudge die rolls, but I would maybe make exceptions of changing up the difficulty of certain tasks and giving them hints and telegraphing things for them. So like this was a really cool example. So this room up here, they get into this room with this spider, right? There's spider webs. They burned the webs with the torches. I can't remember if I kind of hinted that or not. There's this crystal spider here. And when they come up, my 4-year-old was like, I want to break the crystal spider because inside the spider you can see this awesome sword that you can kind of tell is probably magical, right? And so that's creative for a 4-year-old, I got to tell you. So she whacks at it. Well, the adventure says once they do anything to disturb the crystal spider, the real spider drops in. So they got these tokens. These are actually sweet for Shadowdark, honestly, because it's black and white art on the tokens. So the spider drops in from the ceiling and attacks her. So it's like right here. She was right here, I think. And I had telegraphed this. So the book tells you like this statue, if you do a perception check, you can see that the statue could be tipped over, yada, yada. Well, there's not perception checks in Shadowdark, for one thing. But what I did was I described the statue as already being tilted kind of forward toward the crystal when I described it first thing in the room. And my 10-year-old said, ooh, I know. We should get behind the statue and push it over onto the spider. That's actually what the book says essentially to do. It's the quickest way to kill the spider. But he came up with the idea by me just giving him a nudge of a hint. I was I was pretty impressed with that. This is really funny but sad. He missed his roll. You don't want to see them not succeed on something like that when they have a cool roll. So maybe I shouldn't have even made him roll for the strength check to push it over because rule of cool, right? That was maybe a mistake I made, but it worked out in the end. So they in Shadowdark you have a luck token. So I gave each character a luck token, which is essentially a reroll. And so when they missed, I let him turn in his luck token, roll again, try again, and then they succeeded. Well, you also can hand out a luck token. It's like the 5e equivalent of inspiration, essentially, for creative ideas. So I gave him his luck token right back for the idea of pushing the statue over. So that obliterated the spider and the crystal spider, freeing up the weapon. Here's one example of transferring 5e stuff. So the sword that's in there is really strong. It was a magic sword that also did fire damage and lights up the room like a torch almost, which is super important in Shadowdark if you are familiar with Shadowdark. So I played it. I downgraded the fire damage D4, I think, but I'm also letting her use that like a torch. And speaking of torches, my son, the Lego minifig, the helmet had a little piece where you could place something. Just because he found that helmet to build his little minifigure, I allowed him to attach the torch to his helmet, which was pretty, you know, neat and clever also. I think maybe the biggest challenge with kids is they get so excited, they all want to yell out at the same time. And also, especially my 8-year-old wanted to be really silly. There was a lot of a lot of butthole stabbing and stuff like that. And I tried to get them to cool it on that stuff while still allowing them to have a little bit of fun and silliness with it. But I really front loaded them with the expectation that you take turns, that when it's somebody's turn to talk, then everybody else is just listening and not interrupting. And that was hard for them. It really was. But it went really well at first. And kids have a short attention span. You can't play a 2-hour session with young kids like that. Kind of, I would say kind of 30 minutes. It might be your sweet spot. It felt to me like once we started to drag on a little bit longer than that, my 8-year-old was kind of going like, he was kind of losing interest in picking up toys around him and interrupting more. And I decided to find a quick break spot when I started to notice that. It, it was a struggle, though, getting them focused, especially the two youngest. My 10-year-old was all in on it. He was super enthused and had a blast. As far as converting from 5e to Shadowdark, it actually was a little easier than I expected. The Stranger Things set comes with these pretty cool monster cards with pictures on the back. Again, it's black and white line art, so that makes a lot of sense. So goblins, gnolls, giant spiders, those are in Shadowdark anyway. So I just used the Shadowdark equivalent, didn't bother with this really at all. The only ones I had to convert were the Demogorgon spawn and then a couple mushrooms, which we haven't got to yet, a shrieker and a violent fungus. So I did make conversion cards on that. But we'll look at the Demogorgon spawn since that's the one I did actually have to do. I dropped the AC by 1. Just generally speaking, Shadowdark ACs are a little bit lower. And I just did the hit points half. That's your average hit points. Rolling a d8 is 4.5. So what would that be? 9, 18. So there's level 5. Actually, there's probably a level 5 character, so I went 22. Attacks were bite with a grappling, grab if they successfully get the bite. I did that pretty much the same, but I drop the bonus damage. Shadowdark does not use bonus damage, so the spawn on a bite does 1d4 plus 3 damage. I just did 1d4. And then I did the grab, but not the plus 3 damage. Movement changes from 40 feet to double near, which double near basically means it moves twice as fast as the characters can. So all that's pretty straightforward. It was pretty easy. It worked really well. The battle with the Demogorgon was awesome. Actually, maybe I will recap it a little bit. So, spoiler. So here's the little Demogorgon spawn, and that happened down here. Oh, let's get to the maze here. I'll show this. This is pretty sweet. There's a couple things here that were cool or funny. So, the maze looks like this, and this is where they find the Demogorgon. And if you're familiar with Stranger Things, you'll understand how this ties in. My kids don't know Stranger Things, but they know a little bit. Like the 10-year-old at least has seen the Demogorgon on YouTube videos and stuff, so knew what it looked like and loves my minis. So there's a Pathfinder mini named Gug that I will use as the Demogorgon when if we play again, if it comes up again, if we continue this, which we will, I hope. So here's a good point of telegraphing. This was so funny, I thought. So this map telegraphs the danger here. There's these three spots where there's blood on the ground and bones, and those three spots are traps. And so it's telegraphing that there's a trap there and somebody got trapped and died. So as he's like my let's see, my 10-year-old, the priest was in the front because he had a high AC and a shield and stuff. I said, "Well, what are you doing? How are you approaching things?" He's like, "Well, he might have said he was being careful or whatever." But I'm like, when you get to here, you really notice that there's blood all over the place and bones, and stuff. So I really thought he would catch on and go, "Oh man, I got to be careful here." And what he did was they had just found some empty flasks as a random treasure I rolled up. And he's like, "Ooh, I'm going to collect some of the blood because it might be useful in something else." So he bends down to try to scoop blood into the flask. And I'm like, okay, well, obviously this is going to set the trap off. So I give him a save, and he made his save, thankfully. I didn't cheat on any of that or whatever. So I just say, as he ducks down, the spears like poke like right above his head, and like he can feel it on his clothing, but it didn't stab him, and he realizes what it was. So then they didn't fall for the next two traps. So that was kind of cool. Uh, the Demogorgon has another thing that sources of light flicker and things like that. And I had set a torch timer while they were going through this. So they come around here. The Minotaur's dead. The Demogorgon is eating the Minotaur. And basically, right as they got around this corner, my torch timer really actually went off. So it's like ding, 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 ding. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys, the torch goes off. But you see this thing, eating this Minotaur just that it just defeated basically, and like, so that suggests how powerful it is and all that. And then I'm like, what are you guys gonna do? You see that, and then the lights go out. We relight our torches, and it made for a perfect spooky scene because we relight the torches, and this thing has a leaping ability, and this thing leaps. Like as soon as they see it again, it looks up because the light, and it leaps at them, and the battle was on. And it was a really fun fight. Like it got the grab two different times on different characters. I was trying to do protective spells like protection from evil. This is one spot I had to twist the rules a little bit because the Demogorgon, if it grabs you in its jaws, it automatically hits the next turn if you're grabbed. Well, I had cast protection from evil, which makes attacks at disadvantage. So I went ahead and I split the difference. I made it so that the character who had protection from evil cast on it, but was in the grab, it still had to roll an attack. And so that worked out. That was one way a little bit of creativity as the DM to bend the rules when it makes sense. Because just automatic hit, like that thing would have chewed up my kids, well, at least one of them. So one of the things that I love about this box set, if you know the Stranger Things part of it, they haven't got to this yet, but there's some hints. The spoiler. This is another big spoiler. The Upside Down is the second part of this dungeon. So it flips. When you go through, you flip, and here's the other dungeon, and everything is mirrored, right? So you find things here that make sense on the flip side. And One of them was in this treasure chest, you would find a magic wand. And then on the upside down part of it, you find a broken wand that doesn't work. Well, I decided other than the key treasures that really mattered, like the magic sword I alluded to, I decided the best thing to do was to roll treasures out of the Shadowdark book because that's one thing where it will need conversions. I would say so 5e gold is like, let's say you have 100 gold in 5e, that's probably equivalent to maybe 20 gold in Shadowdark. It's just that's a rough estimate. So depending on how much gold is being thrown out in an adventure, uh, if you're converting, you're definitely going to want to give out less gold. I decided the best thing to do was just to roll treasure randomly out of the Shadowdark book because they have such awesome charts for that. So it is, let's see, treasure 0 to 3. So when I got to this treasure chest, instead of the magic wand, I rolled a treasure and I actually rolled a 98, which is a bag of holding, which is so perfect for a young group. So it let me kind of skip the. That's one of the things with playing with kids. Simplify. I don't want them necessarily to have to track um, slots, inventory slots, too much. I told them a little bit about that, but by giving them a bag of holding, and I didn't even mean to, it came up randomly on a chart, but it was perfect because now they can kind of hand wave that a little bit and get to the action faster. Those things that slow down the game like that work a lot better for adults who have that, bigger attention span. It's one of the ways to simplify the game and not worry so much about inventory slots. So, anyway, I already have this idea. They found a bag of holding. When they get to the other side, instead of finding a wand here and a broken wand on the other side, they're just going to find an ordinary, like, potato sack and be like, what? But I know it connects. So they'll start to notice that because every room has these things that connect. I think they'll catch on to that. I'm actually really excited about this part about the upside down. So they battled the Demogorgon. It ran through a secret door, a portal. They've seen the portal. They know that's where to go. They've explored everything up here except for one tiny spot. And when they get to that, um, the gnome is actually hiding in the upside down. But I'm going to have him, and he's in this room, but the upside down version. So when they get here, I'm going to have him use his voice and say, something like, haha, I am here, but not here. I am under here. And then they'll say, oh, I just made you say underwear. But that's my hint that that's the room they should look at when they get to the upside down. That's one of my plans moving forward. So this is actually, other than depending on how strict parenting style you have with gore and seeing the word hellfire on the box or something, this is a great adventure for kids because it's got a lot of clever things that connect up like that, connecting the upside down and they haven't picked up on the upside down yet because they've only found that portal and haven't gone through it. But they did a really good job. Up here there's goblins who are friendly, and as long as you help them, are friendly and let you use their forge. That worked out really well. It was a really cool experience. We had 2 great sessions, and I'm excited to play the next one, and I know my kids are too. You can play Dungeons and Dragons with your kids, and you can convert 5e adventures to a simpler system like Shadowdark, which is my system of choice, but it may not be yours. There's plenty of other systems out there. But 5e is a lot for a kid to take in. It's a lot for an adult to take in when you're trying to learn all those rules. Some people like to pretend it's a simple system, but it's not. There's a lot of depth and complexity to 5e. So I think also it's good to use maps and minis or some sort of physical representation with kids who are more visual learners. I think the theater of the mind would be a little harder to pull off with them. So I think it draws them into the world and helps them visualize. I think that was kind of a key element here. And I love minis anyway, and all these maps. I've been going bonkers buying these Loki battle maps. I'll get to that on another video. In fact, I already did a short with some of the stuff I got, but I've got more since as well. So that covers most of, I think, what I wanted to say with playing with kids. Let them be creative. They will surprise you with their creativity sometimes. I know my 4-year-old, we had it when I played with just her one time. This was cute, actually. Uh, there was a gnome in that adventure too, and he was trapped. He was tied up, and she was playing a character who used a bow. And she said, "Oh, I know. I'll save him by shooting the rope with my bow." And I was just like, "That's a cool idea. It's a cool idea. It's probably the hardest way to do it, but I just absolutely let her run with that." She remembered that. So when we had this gnome here in this adventure, she called him Gnomely because she goes, "Oh, that's my friend Gnomely from before," which was awesome, right? And I want another thing I wanted to say about her. This was pretty neat. This is one of those things that, as a dad, I probably appreciate that this more than what you guys will. But after we played, after the second session when they had battled the Demogorgon, she got out some crayons and started coloring, and she drew this. And I said, "Oh, what's that?" She said, "Oh, that's the Demogorgon." The little flowery thing. I was like, "That's pretty darn cool." So she was motivated artistically by the whole thing too. So yeah, I really wanted this to be kind of a tutorial how to play with kids, whether it's whatever system, but specifically I'm looking at Shadowdark. And so the other flip side of that is how to convert 5e to Shadowdark. Monsters, a lot of them are already, not a lot, but some of them are already in. There's some guides out there. Night Noon Games, Michael Putlack has a good one. Look at a monster block out of the Shadowdark book and do it in that format so you know, like, most monsters and creatures in Shadowdark have one or two abilities. So cut all the other stuff and figure out what is the essence of the creature that you need to convert. Like, what is their main ability, and focus on that. The hit points are going to be roughly half ish, but that might depend on, some different things. But you're going to need to convert monsters. Not really a huge deal. You're going to need to convert um, treasure. But again, it's not super hard, and an easy fallback is to just roll treasure randomly out of the book, which I started doing. The first few treasures they found, I used them as is, and then I started to realize, oh, it's actually easier to just roll it randomly unless it's a key part of the story, a key part of what needs to be happening. Those are the two main conversions. Other than that, you handle traps and perception checks and all that a little bit differently. You don't necessarily do those things. You just allow the characters to say what they're doing. If they're looking for traps, they find the trap. So if my son over here had said anything about that he suspected a trap to be there, I would have let him find it. And once they did find it, I let my son, who was playing the thief, uh, you know, uh, disarm the trap, and then they knew about the other ones. So I don't know. I hope that gives you some great information about, playing with your kids and playing. Have fun, man. Like, so if I'm at a point where I can start playing D&D with my kids, I just think that's super cool. It's something I've been waiting for for a long time, and I've been kind of hesitant. I don't know why it feels overwhelming, but just do it. Just jump in and start playing, and don't try to make it too complicated. And I think you'll be just fine and have a lot of fun and learn from your mistakes. There's, you're going to do some things wrong and figure out, oh man, that was too much for my kids to be able to do or understand. It also depends on the age of the kids. But like I said, my 4-year-old is having a blast and contributing and has good ideas. She's not just like, oh, we'll let her play so she thinks she's doing something. They do have a tendency to pick up the minis and move them around, whatever. So, anyway. All right, I'm Bradu. Thanks for watching. If you like this type of content, give me a like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I really appreciate any support I can get as a very small channel trying to get any kind of footing. I'm not in this to make money. I don't have any dreams that I will be making money doing this, but getting a little bit of an interaction on each of my videos would be an awesome thing.